Hi, everyone. Great to be welcoming you guys back. I'm sure I was there for part of the previous session. Again, very, very interactive, very enthusiastic participants. So just a heads up to our session lecturers this time as well. And of course, participants, you guys have three amazing people doing this session for you guys. And particularly this workshop, Use of Technology, is very, very popular from ENAI. They've done this quite a few times already, and I'm sure you guys will really enjoy the session once again. So all the best to everybody.
Thank you, Zinat, for nice introduction. Yeah, we have 3 hours, so it won't be only the workshop, even though the core of today's session will be the workshop interpreting text matching software similarity tools, but we will be also dealing with other technology, technology for cheating, to know how it works and how some students use it, and also more in general technology for prevention of cheating. That will be Jared's continuation after Dita and I are finished. I'm not sure how you are used to how these sessions usually look like, but feel free to interrupt us anytime, like jump in if you have any question or comment or whatever, or write your message to chat. We would like to have it as interactive as possible. Yeah, and of course, if you disagree with something, so please feel free to disagree loudly so we can discuss the issues.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. I'm just now a little bit not sure if I'm sharing the right screen. So do you see the presentation or yes? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so we will have actually two parts here. And let's start with the first part, which will be about interpreting similarity reports for software for supporting of plagiarism detection. So it will be presented by me and my colleague Tomáš. We both of us are from Czechia, so from Central Europe. So for us, it's 1 p.m. in the afternoon, so nice time. And then the second part will go to Jared to USA. So this is going to be a really international session. So a little bit about us. So we both are from Mendel University in Brno, from Faculty of Business and Economics, and both of us here work here at the Department of Informatics. So by our background, we are computer scientists, which will be probably quite visible from our session and presentation. At our faculty, I'm a vice dean for accreditation, and regarding ENAI, I am a manager of the ENAI database of educational materials. And Tomáš is assistant professor at our faculty. He's actually ex-vice dean. He used to be vice dean for international affairs. And regarding ENAI, he is the president of the board of ENAI. So what we will have in this first part of the session, and right now I'm a little bit worried that I'm sharing the wrong presentation, so I'm sorry. I will just switch to the right presentation.
So far, everything was true. So.
Yes, so far everything was true, but the next slide, you would miss a nice picture which we took actually at summer school in 2018 when we were at Cyprus in 19. Well, it was still possible to travel by that time.
Yeah, right before COVID-19.
Yes. Okay, yeah. So here's the outline of the workshop and also the picture that we took in Cyprus. So this is a kind of like plagiarism that we did with Tomáš to this nice mural that was that we found or that we was showed in the streets of Nicosia. So we will start with the definition of plagiarism. You might have been discussing the definition of plagiarism already in this school, so it would be nice for us to hear what you were already learning. Then we will take a look at the results of a project which was called Testing of Support Tools for Plagiarism Detection, which was a project which we did with multiple other partners for multiple other universities. So we will share with you some interesting results, which might be quite practical for you. And then we will get to this like core of this session, which will be a practical part, and we will interpret reports, and we will have reports, and our task will be to judge the cases. And then we will discuss the prevention of plagiarism, or have some general discussion to our topic before we will pass the word to Jared. So let's start with the first thing. And this is going to be the definition of plagiarism. So for this task for definition of plagiarism, I would like to use the tool Mentimeter, which you might have know from other sessions from this summer school. So if you go to menti.com and you enter there the code which you can see on the screen 45209024, then you can join this presentation, and you can write there your definition of plagiarism. So we will then see, when I will share the screen with the results, we will then see your definitions of plagiarism. So it can be like how you perceive plagiarism, or maybe something which you have already agreed in within the summer school, or what is your institutional definition of plagiarism. Yeah, like feel free to write there, whatever feels right to you.
And it is not necessary to craft the precise definition, just to capture the most important concepts which are there according to your opinion.
And please let us know if you have some technical difficulties with the Mentimeter or with anything else, so we can deal with the difficulties.
Mm-hmm. And if you don't want to type the numbers, Zinat just shared the direct link. Thanks for that.
Okay, we are getting some results, so I will already share the screen with the results so you can read them, but feel free to type there your definition if you still haven't done it.
Have you discussed the definition of plagiarism before? I mean, within this summer school? No. Zinat is indicating no. Osgur is nodding like yes.
Not in detail like this. Okay, yeah, so there was some discussion. Okay, so we are getting quite many answers. Unfortunately, the Mentimeter is not putting them together until they are like using exactly the same words or letters. But we can see like the most common is using someone else's work, and also what is there quite often in different different words is that it's either like cheating, stealing, theft, sin, or something like this. So something which is like definitely not positive. And also there is like mentioned the breach of copyright, or without that it's some copy without saying the origin, or lacking acknowledgement, or not attributing others people of work, or unauthorized use, or also no citing. Okay, so just to put it together, so definitely it's something using somebody else's work without not giving credit or acknowledgement to the original work, and we can like also see that we are perceiving it very negatively. So let's now take a look at the kind of like our definition, or the definition which is like a little bit more elaborated, but I think it very well suits to what you were writing to Mentimeter. And this is that it's use of ideas, content, or structure. So this is what you wrote, someone else's work. It doesn't have to be exactly just the text, but it can be really just an idea or content or structure without appropriate acknowledging, which was also what you wrote to the Mentimeter. And what we are adding here, and this comes from a definition by Mrs. Teddy Fishman, is that it's to gain some benefit in a setting where originality is expected. So it's not every time when I use some text without stating the original source. For example, if I would, let's say, send instructions at the beginning of the semester to my students, like how to proceed within the course, and I would send the same instructions which Tomáš wrote last semester, and now I started to teach instead of him. Well, it wouldn't be probably like some serious plagiarism, or it wouldn't be like big plagiarism, because it's just the instructions. Nobody expects there's some special originality, and I also don't get any benefit from it. Just maybe I save my time to writing the instructions again. On the other hand, maybe the instructions were already perfect because Tomáš have been teaching the course already 10 years. So the benefit were to gain some benefit in a setting where originality is expected. So this is like the academic setting when we are either getting some grades or evaluation based on the text, or it's in academic settings when we are researchers and we are publishing our results, and usually the researchers are evaluated by their results, and this kind of like evaluation of the results, this is the benefit, and the originality is expected, of course, in the research or in this like academic setting, from the point of view when we are like perceiving by the works within the education.
Yeah. If I just may jump into it and add two aspects which I consider particularly important, and it was like yeah, I spent like hours discussing with my colleagues about this definition. You can see that there is no explicit word text. So plagiarism does not refer only to text. It can refer to any kind of content like imaging, charts, tables, mathematical formulas, videos, architecture, design, whatever. Yeah? So idea is what counts here, and it doesn't matter how the idea is expressed. And it can be also an idea about how to structure the work, about the skeleton of the work, not about the particular texts. And the second aspect is that we are not talking about another person. We are talking about another source, to include also self-plagiarism. Yeah? And the general rule here that we should deal with our own previously published publications as if it was published by anyone else, yeah? Which is important for students when they are submitting some assignment in one course. They cannot recycle it in another course, and also for scientists, duplicate publication is a breach of academic integrity. Yeah, so it's important that you can commit plagiarism from yourself, so it is not necessarily someone else's work.
Thank you very much for the additional comment. Maybe I would like now to ask participants if you have some question or comment on this definition. I already can see the comment from Oscar in the chat, so feel free to speak or just write it to the chat or like raise your hand.
Or Oscar, does it mean that you don't agree, or you just wanted to point it out?
No, this is a very good point, and I like when I see the definition, because this where originality is expected is missed in many other definitions of plagiarism. So this is a very good point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and sometimes it can lead to completely useless fear that students will commit plagiarism. Like copying is integral part of learning in a lot of lot of courses, lot of areas. So we have to acknowledge that if you are learning by copying and don't want to get credit for that content, it is not plagiarism.
Okay, any comment? Question?
Everybody's still tired after lunch.
Yeah, probably. So let's move just to practical applications to plagiarism. So what it includes. So using work of someone else and presenting it as your own. Yeah, I was just dealing this semester with a student who submitted work of another student from another university, and she just exchanged her name. So this was like really clear plagiarism. It is also when the origin or when other work is translated or paraphrased and it's passed as an original. Again, yeah, this wasn't my personal experience, but we have a big issue in Czech Republic where quite a prominent person was publicating for years in a way that he was just translating work from English to Czech, and then he was just making these publications, and this is also plagiarism. And it's like, yeah, pretty serious because it's like sneaky. It's like clear that the person is trying to hide it. As Tomáš mentioned, using your own previously published work without proper acknowledgement. This is like very important point in this. When you proper acknowledge this part will have been already published, or yeah, just some acknowledgement, then it's okay, or it depends on the settings, but proper acknowledgement is very important. The strict definition of plagiarism also includes actually failing to correctly cite and reference another source. So when the source is not like referenced properly and cited correctly, it also fits to the definition of plagiarism, even when the consequences of the seriousness of the plagiarism would be completely different from taking entire work from someone else and just submit it as my own. And also it's not giving credits for contribution for someone else to your work. So if we would write a paper together with Tomáš, and Tomáš would just send it to a journal just with his name, he would be also committing plagiarism because he did not acknowledge his co-author.
Oh gosh,
and
I exactly wanted to do.
yes. And also you probably heard in some previous sessions of your summer school about the contract cheating, when the students submit work which is written by someone else and it's kind of like tailored for them. This actually also fits to the definition of plagiarism because they are not acknowledging the original source, they are not acknowledging the original author, and of course it's a breach of academic integrity. The next question is, what is not plagiarism? Can you imagine some like something which would be on the border, which would be on the border, which would somehow would be not stating the source, not stating the author, and it would not be plagiarism? Please write it to the chat or just like speak loud. I can see a hand up from Nader, please.
Yes, I have a question about that. Like if I have an idea and it's the same of someone else, I don't know about it, but and maybe if I write it and my supervisor said, oh, somebody talk about it before, it's the same idea, but I don't know about that. I have the same idea. Like, for example, if I'm talking about using the technology in teaching, maybe I'm gonna have an idea, somebody talking about it before, but I didn't realize that. So what can we see in this case?
Yeah, I would distinguish two issues. First is that someone else told you about that idea and you forgot it. And the second issue is that two people independently come up with the same idea on the opposite sides of the globe, yeah, which can happen, and it happens sometime. So, yeah, if you come up independently, if you come up with some idea independently from another person, obviously you can't commit plagiarism because you are not using his or her source. Yeah, so if then you both publish the papers which are similar, it might be there might be some accusations, but it should not be a problem to prove that you didn't know each other, that you haven't ever met, and this was only by coincidence. It's quite unlikely that this happens exactly in the same time. Yeah, so to prevent this, we should always conduct proper literature review, and before publishing the paper, we have to make sure that no one else published this idea, or if yes, so we have to incorporate that idea to our work, like to compare it, or to say that this work is similar to that one, but I don't know, whatever. The other issue is when you forget that the idea is not yours. This also happens. It's called cryptomnesia, and it's a psychology has a name for that process because it happens. It sometimes happens. So again, yeah, this would be plagiarism, but unintentional plagiarism. And to prevent that, the best way is to keep proper track when you are working on some paper and taking ideas from other people, other sources. So write down all the discussions you had with your colleagues, or the ideas that someone told you, so you can later you are later able to attribute that source to a particular person.
Yeah, we have some comments in the chat. So I would start with the second comments when Hattis is confused about the definition, like about the originality, before we will get to this when it's not plagiarism. So let's just jump a little bit back to the definition. So yeah, in the settings where originality is not expected, then it might be.
Dita, may I stop you? Well, what if we give space to other participants? Like, is there anyone who can explain how you understand where originality is expected and where it is not?
Yeah, I can see two hands up.
Another probably did not lower the hand, but yeah.
Okay. Oscar?
I'll speak from the language teaching perspective. In the literature, many scholars see patch writing as a development tool in academic writing. So here, when teaching writing, sometimes teachers use patch writing technique. Teachers ask students to patch write, and here they don't expect an originality. So in this case, this is not plagiarism. This is just a tool that is used to develop the writing skills of the learners. But of course, if a teacher expects an originality, patch writing is plagiarism. So this may be an example, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much.
Can I give one example from my own context?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I teach listening and speaking, and I expect my students to do some presentations sometimes, and I do not always expect originality, actually. For example, they can do some research and they can provide others' ideas. And then is it okay when they do not cite that work, they put in the presentation? I'm not expecting originality here. I just want them to do some research and then present what they find.
I think
But I also expect them to cite where they get the information from.
Yeah, then I can see it's like totally okay. You just like yeah, take the ideas from somebody else and then you reference the original source, so it's like perfectly okay. It doesn't have to be like always a new original idea. You can just like put there, like especially when we are learning, we can just put together ideas from two different authors and just maybe compare them. And yeah, then we come up with like something a little bit new. And if we reference to the original authors or original sources, that it would be like totally fine.
That's why I actually got confused. I just wanted to ask.
Yeah. Yeah,
Thank
whenever
you.
like you state the reference source, it's fine.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really important to have the discussion with students and to make clear what is actually expected. So it's good for the students, so they know exactly what the task is about, and it also good for teacher, because then later if you feel that the student did not what you expected, so you have yeah, you can have some grounds to tell them, hey, this was not what I wanted, and we discussed it properly at the beginning, so you are failing the course, or I want you to rework it, or something like that. Yeah, and we have in the discussion that definitions are clear, but people often either don't understand them or try to bend them. That's, yeah, exactly true. So that's why it is important to really properly discuss with the students what the task is about, and yeah, and if the originality is expected or not.
And I like the note that it gets murky when we are considering the difference between the inspiration and appropriation. And I think it's quite connected with the comment which we have, that sometimes the directors, they kind of like reference to some other movie. Of course, they do not like put their reference to a movie, but you kind of can recognize that this is a scene which should resemble you, this 20-year-old movie. And if you are a big movie fan, you can see there this like a reference. On the other hand, it's murky. It might be like this inspiration which makes everybody happy, and on the other hand it might be taken this like stealing some idea and so on. And I think it so much depends on the context, especially in this not sure if artistic or commercial environment is both of them, so it's difficult to distinguish them. I can see hand up, but
Exactly.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. I think we are a bit mixing up the copyright or patent and academic integrity, because originality is basically expected, which Dita just actually in her last sentence sort of cover that, because artistic work or something like, you know, what is called patent, that's need originality to get the copyright under the name of a author or a creator. Whereas I'm a bit confused actually, that what is originality expected in the plagiarism, because if someone already acknowledged the aspect, whether it is original or not, that means it is academically acceptable. I mean, it is acknowledged, so it cannot be counted as plagiarism, doesn't it?
Yes, when it's acknowledged, it cannot be taken as plagiarism. And I think this is a great question, that there is actually a big difference, at least I can perceive it, big difference between the originality in the academic settings and the originality probably from the point of view of the copyright, or maybe also the common sense, when we perceive that the original is something which is completely new. But in academic settings, especially when we are speaking just about students and we are learning, the original can be just like some small step which was like brought by the student. As I mentioned, if like a student takes 2 papers and like writes, let's say, discussion about the ideas from these papers, he didn't think, he didn't brought anything like extremely new. He didn't bring something which would be like for Nobel Prize, but he wrote an original piece of work in the sense that this discussion that he made about these 2 papers, it's something new which he was writing, and of course he was like using these ideas from the papers, and of course he was acknowledging them.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's important to distinguish what is ethical or unethical, what is plagiarism, and what is violation of copyright. Yeah, that these three things are not. It's not the same issue. If I take Dita's dissertation thesis, it's, I don't know, 80 pages of the text, and yeah, I want to pass my PhD degree, so I know that Dita wrote the best thesis ever, and I couldn't do it better, and I say, yeah, Dita Dlabolova says that, quotation mark, then I copy all the 80 pages from her, quotation mark. It is not plagiarism because I acknowledged her, but this is violation of copyright because I took too much, and it is certain. I certainly don't deserve the PhD degree for that, because for this Dita already got her degree, and I didn't contribute it with anything which could justify getting my degree. Yeah, but I did not commit plagiarism.
Last year we were with Tomáš cooperating on a writing of a handbook for students, like for prevention of plagiarism, and one of the co-authors wrote there a chapter about the originality. And what I really liked there was that in the educational settings we are not expecting to discover America, but we are expected to make some small journey over the ocean, or maybe just over the river, and to learn something in this journey. So this is what I really like as a definition of like educational originality. You don't have to discover the America, but take the journey by yourself and learn something new. Yeah, Tomáš just posted to the chat the link to this book. It's like pretty short, so feel free to use it. It's freely available in PDF.
Yeah, first one is for students, and the second one for supervisors.
Okay. Anything else about the definition? I can see there's something in chat.
Yeah, there is the comment about the copyright. Yeah, even though you acknowledge the source, you can say that, yeah, this image comes from this image bank. It doesn't mean that it is legal. Yeah? If you don't have the consent from the original author to use that image in the work that you are doing, yeah, it might not be plagiarism, but it is a violation of copyright.
Yeah, and on the other hand, at least according to the Czech copyright law, if you just would take an idea which was published in some other book, you would not violate the copyright, because what is copyrighted is just like the text, like word by word. This is what is protected, at least according to our law, by copyright. So when lawyers and educators meet in a discussion about plagiarism, it's always horrible, because they have always different point of view on it.
Yeah, not only text, but expression of the idea, not idea as such.
Yeah.
We should move forward.
Yes, we should. So I will just go quickly to this. What is not plagiarism, when we do not have to state the source, is when we are mentioning some general knowledge, or when we are mentioning some general knowledge in our field. So if I would just state in my introduction of some text that Brno is the second biggest city in Czech Republic, it is general knowledge, and I don't have to like state there the source who said that the Brno is second biggest city of Czech Republic. Of course, the general knowledge in the field can like depend. Yeah, it can be like difficult to distinguish what is still general knowledge or not. But it's also for me, what always helps is like to ask myself, okay, do my students know this? Do the students from the bachelor study program know this? And if I answer myself yes, already our bachelor students know this fact, so I can consider it as the general knowledge from the given field. On the other hand, what I say to my students when they are not sure whether this is general knowledge or if it's like the thing which they should already mention the source, that they should rather mention the source. And also the third thing which I say about general knowledge to my students is that the general knowledge usually doesn't add anything new or interesting to the given piece of work. It doesn't bring anything to the text. So it basically does not make much sense to put there a lot of general knowledge. It's good to put it there in some introduction, maybe conclusion, or to like at some like intermediate level when you need to connect two ideas. So put there some general knowledge, but to build the text on general knowledge, this is not academic text. And also when we are not committing plagiarism and there is some contribution from somebody else, it's the contribution from somebody else who do not influence the content. So this can be the proofreading when really somebody just for example, checks my English because I'm not native speaker, you can probably hear it. So I always need proofreading of my English text or typographic corrections or formatting. And again, this there can be like many blur area when the proofreading gets like too far that it's already starting to improve the text a lot. So it's always good to keep the proofreading really on the level of the corrections of the grammar. Any comments or questions on this? I can see there's something very long in the chat, so I will just read it for myself, and please feel free to ask or discuss questions.
I already agreed with Jacquard. It's a comment about the difference between the legal action if you violate the copyright issues and ethical action if you commit plagiarism or do something unethical.
Okay.
Also,
so, yeah.
Can I just add something also? When I was actually taking a course from Harvard Law School, we also learned that because of the copyright is actually a statutory law, it depends or is supported by statutory law, passed by the parliament or a particular country, whereas the academic integrity related issues, institutional law, what we can say the rules, like basically you probably can impose to some extent, but you don't have any, what is called that legal action supporting authority will support you, not at least at this moment. So one is legal action and one is ethical actions. One is supported by the statutory law. Another one is the institutional rules and regulation. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Okay, so after a nice discussion about the definition of plagiarism, I will pass the main words to Tomasz, and he will introduce you the results of the testing of support tools for plagiarism detection.
Okay, yeah, I'm sharing the work. Not only Dita and I were involved. There were, I think, nine authors of that paper, including Salim and Özgür, who are here. And it was the largest text matching tool test which was, to our knowledge, ever conducted. The basic idea or the reason why we tested these tools were that, like, yeah, now we know what plagiarism is, and we would like, we as a teachers would love to have a plagiarism detection tool. A piece of software you can upload student work and it marks, hey, this is plagiarism or this is not. So we wanted to know if there are such tools or how good the tools which claim to detect plagiarism are. So we prepared documents in 8 different languages according to our native languages, and we tested 15 systems which agreed to be tested. The results are already published. Yeah? So what I'm sharing now here are not the original results. It's already published in International Journal of Educational Integrity in Higher Education. And we also published all our tables and the data which led to our comparison. So which we based our evaluation on. So on the next slide, you can see the 15 tools which we tested. Yeah, those of you who participated in a conference, ENAI conference last week, so you can see Turnitin, then Plagscan and Urkund, which are now original, which were our sponsors, as well as Strike Plagiarism. the Russian anti-plagiat and Compilatio were not included in our test, but there were, Unicheck is now part of 13. So 15 in that time independent tools. We did our test in two different areas. First area was coverage evaluation, and the main research question was how much of the known plagiarism can the system detect or highlight. So we prepared documents in 8 European languages. We included not only copy-pasted content, but we also replaced synonyms in some documents. We paraphrased the content and translated it. Most of translations were from English to that particular languages, but we had also translations between Czech and Slovak, because there are quite similar languages, and there were translations from Russian to Latvian, which is also something which happens pretty often in Latvia. And we use various types of sources. We copied from Wikipedia, we copied from open access journal papers, and we copied from student theses, which were publicly available from university web pages. The documents which we had in the database were either copied from a single source or composed from multiple sources, simulating what students do when preparing their assignments and plagiarizing. We very soon found out that percentages presented by the systems are not meaningful at all. Some systems even presented different values for the same document. So you uploaded the document, got 25%, then you uploaded the document half an hour later and got 32%. Yeah, it was particularly for the tools which randomly select some parts from the document and try to search for them in the internet. So if you select different parts, then you get different results. So we used our own evaluation scale from 0 to 5 points. Each document or each report presented by the system was evaluated independently by 2 people, and then we discussed differences. And here are the results of our coverage evaluation. If it comes to Wikipedia, you can see that the major systems performed pretty well. Like Unicheck, Urkund, 5 out of 5 points, Turnitin, Strike Plagiarism, 4.9. So basically everything which was copy-pasted from Wikipedia was found. When we replaced synonyms, the text match was lower, and when we paraphrased the content, we got even lower scores depending on how properly we paraphrased it. But basically all major systems indexed Wikipedia. But we tested not only Wikipedia, we tested also other sources. And as you can see, the results were a bit worse than for Wikipedia. Open access papers, the tools differ a lot. The same for student theses and other online articles. So the text match which is presented by the system obviously depends on what the system has in their database, and this is where the systems differ a lot. Yeah, so if you don't see any text match in the report, it doesn't mean that the work is original. It may also mean that it was copied from a source which is not indexed by the system. Yeah, so no system can give you a certificate or of originality or something like that, which some systems use as a marketing tool. Also, for the plagiarism method, you can see that for copy-pasted content, it was quite okay. But the more obfuscation we did, the lower match we got. And for translation, you can see that almost none of the systems was able to find a translation. The only notable exception was Albanian national system Academia, but the drawback of that system was that the database was really limited, so it did not index much. Yeah? But if we translate it from something which the system has in the database, it could find it. there is one hint or two hints how you can identify translation plagiarism. First are image captions, and the second are text match in the list of references. Here we asked one student to translate the Wikipedia article on plagiarism detection from English to Spanish, and the student accidentally forgot to translate the image caption. And yeah, we could see the text match. The same for references. This is something you don't translate, so the text match is still there. And when it comes to similar languages, there is a higher text match, which is given by the inherent similarity of these languages. So this was the coverage evaluation. The second part of our evaluation was usability evaluation. We had 23 objective criteria, which we divided into 3 groups. First was workflow process, so how comfortable it is to work with the system, how usable the system is. Then the second aspect was presentation of results, so how usable are the reports produced by the system, how easily you can identify what the system is telling you. And then the third group were other usability aspects. Yeah, so we basically gave 1 or 0 to each of the criteria. So having two groups, coverage and evaluation, it allowed us to compose a 2-dimensional matrix and put the system on each system on a specific place in that matrix. So on the x-axis, you can see coverage evaluation. So the scale is from 0 to 5, and this is average throughout all documents which we had in our testing set. And on the y-axis, there is a weighted score for usability. Since we did our test, there were some changes in the market among the best performing systems. Plaxcam and Urkund, they merged to one company called Original. Turnitin acquired Unicheck, so it is now one company. Everything is owned by Turnitin, and recently Turnitin announced an intention to acquire Original. Yeah, so all these 4 best performing tools might end up being owned by one big company. So we'll have Turnitin for everything, maybe. So let's see. But the most important message for the educators is that the systems cannot find plagiarism. Nothing like plagiarism detection tool exists. These systems are able to identify text match to what they have in their database. And this is really important when working with these systems, to know these limitations and to know these drawbacks, and like not to be overly, not to rely too much on the results and on the reports which are presented by these systems. So that was the presentation of our results. Are there any questions or comments before we go to the practical part?
There were some comments or questions in the chat, but they were not like really about the text matching tools. It was rather about the use of images. So I believe everything was explained there in the chat. And somebody mentioned there that the teachers at his or her institutions, they really often really rely on this text matching software.
Yeah, sometimes institutions have policies like everything below 20% is not plagiarism and stuff like that. So then students play with the document as long as it is over 20%, and then they are sure to pass. Okay. Do we deserve a short break before the interactive part, or there is Akbar, raise your hand. Akbar, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to ask about the detections of these tools to translation. The example that you give is what language is that? Translating one language to English. What do you think about the other languages like Indonesian language or maybe other language? Will they have the same probability that will not be detected with similar percentage?
Yes,
I hope you catch my point.
I think so. The tools are checking for the text match. Yeah? So as long as there is no text match, the system cannot identify that similarity.
Yeah, so I mean, are they the same in other languages, in translating different languages, or only perhaps?
Yeah, and this is language independent. Yeah, if you have two languages which use different words and you translate the document from one language to the other one, you don't have like almost any text match. If the languages are pretty similar, like we had the Czech and Slovak, these are quite similar, there was some text match. Yeah, and this is also language specific language independent. It can apply also to Asian languages, African languages, and so on. If you have two languages which are similar enough, then the translation maintains some text match. And also, and it means that the system will be able to identify that text match.
Yeah, thank you for this information. Very important because many of my colleagues really have to say things that plagiarism text matching software are very effective. So your article will very helping to explain it.
Thank you.
Yeah, they are helpful, but they are not like almighty. They can do only some things, but their abilities are still limited.
Eight minutes break and then interactive part.
Yeah, for me it's fine. Okay, so let's continue at 2 p.m. with the interactive part. it has been already 80 minutes according to my clock. So I think we can start to get back together. So I will start with the introduction of the next part, and I believe if somebody is not connected yet, yeah, they will catch us. So now we will proceed to the practical part, and our task now will be to interpret the similarity reports from some text matching tool. So we will actually have 3 examples in total. First will be just a warm-up example to get to know the system for text matching which we are using. And then it will be like the main big decision where we will have 2 reports. I can tell you in advance, one of them is plagiarism, the other one is not plagiarism, and we will decide which of them is which. I'm not sure if you are used to any particular text matching software. That might be maybe interesting question to start with. Yeah, could you please in the meantime write me to the chat if you are using some text matching software in your institution, or if you are like used to use some of them?
And if yes, please write the name.
Okay, it seems like there is just the majority of Turnitin and authentic. Yeah, Plaxcan at least. Thanks so much that you broke the monopoly. Safe assign. Okay, so the lectures are breaking the monopoly. Okay, so the system which kind of like generated our reports, which we are going to work with, it's not any particular system, because when we were preparing this workshop, we want to have the workshop to be like system independent. So it is an artificial report, so it's not from any particular system, but it was actually prepared manually. And the principle how it works, it's very much inspired by Turnitin and also Plaxcan. I don't know how Safe Assign works, or I don't know how their reports look like, but actually from our experience from this test of 15 systems, like the features, how they are showing the text matches are pretty similar. So yeah, I believe it's like usable no matter which system you're using or that you are used to. Even when the report is artificial, or 3 reports are artificials, the links to the sources are real. I was checking the links still a few weeks ago, so I still hope that the links are working. So feel free to click on any link in the report and check the original source. The links should work. If they do not work, then I'm sorry, and it wasn't an intention. And also the texts, which we will have in these examples in the reports, they were just created for the purpose of this workshop. So please do not evaluate the quality of the text. It is actually low because it was just a text where I need to fit the features for the text matching report, which I wanted to point out. So please focus on only on the work with the sources. So now I will ask Tomáš to send you the first report, which is actually the report 0, to the chat. So this will be a PDF which you can just download to your computer. Feel free to open it and do whatever you would like to do it with it. It's 3 pages. Here you can, for now, can see on my shared screen or in my presentation how it looked like. The first page, it's like the list of the text matches which were found by our system. The second page is the content itself. It's the student text, the student assignment, and the last page is the list of references which were provided by the students. It is not the entire work of the student. It is just some like small part of the student, but based on this small part, we are able to judge the entire work. Let's assume that no matter which other page we would open in this assignment, we would find out, or we would come up to the exactly same result. So we can make our decision just based on one page. We need an access to open the document.
Yeah, I just realized that I'm not allowed to
send the files.
send the file. So
Okay.
Let me just switch on sharing. So no, everyone with the link can read. So you should be able to access the document now. And I will do the same also for the other reports, so we don't have this problem again.
Okay, so I will just like introduce our report a little bit more. What you can see in the text, it's that some parts are like highlighted in colors. The colors match the colors here in the list of sources, and there is also, and maybe this is like, this might be confusing, they are like really tiny upper indexes at the end of each like colored part, and this small number, it just matches also this like source 1, 2, or 3. Yeah, so the red one, there is small number 1 because it's this source 1. The blue one is very small letter number 2, which is this source 2, and here the same with the green part and the number 3. Yeah, so the small indexes, they were added by the system just to make it like a little bit more clear from where this comes from. And yeah, and one more feature of our system is that you can already see there the names of the authors, the years of publication, and sometimes the title of the given document, which is also not a thing which would be done by like a regular system, but just for the sake of this workshop, just to make the work easier for you, you can directly like distinguish that the green part comes from a source which was written by Bretak and Green from 2014. So you don't just have to go to this link and open it, just to make it like a little bit more faster and easier for you. Okay, so take a look at the report, and when you make your decision whether this is plagiarism or not, please write it to the chat.
It seems like we are having experienced audience.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, the red and blue parts, they are, yeah, we can see there the quotation marks. They are also like distinguished from the rest of the text by the italics. So it was like pretty clear that this was some quotations. And we can see that this comes from ENAI 2021, which is here listed in the list of the sources. And this is where it comes from. And the other one is a definition from ENAI, again listed in the sources. So red and blue, they are totally okay. But the problematic part is the green one, because we can see here some references in the text. Well, and the references are mentioned also here in the list of the references. But the problem is that the green part actually comes from this source 3, which is Bretak and Green 2014, which is not mentioned there at all. And if you opened the Bretak and Green, the paper, actually here you can find quite a beginning of the text which was copied to the to this assignment, like really just copy paste, and you can see that the references were just like taken from the original text. Yeah, so I can see according to the comments in the chat that you all recognize it without any issue. Any question or comment at this report? It was just really like to make you familiar with our text matching software. Okay, so let's now move to the real tough question. So now we will have new two reports. This will be report 1 and report 2, which already Tomasz sent you to the chat. So before it was report 0, so you can like forget it. We are not working with it anymore. And now we have report 1 and 2. And basically they look very similar to what we saw in this report 0. And this time we know that one of them is plagiarism and one of them is not plagiarism. But both of them, they have the same text match. The system find 19.4% of a text match. Let's assume that they come from bachelor thesis. So they were written by undergraduate students who like are finishing their bachelor studies with this documents. Again, we can see only one page from the document. Yeah, so let's assume they are much longer. And also when you will be making your decision, you can suppose that both students, they passed some course on academic writing, so they should have the basic knowledge of what is plagiarism or not. So we don't have to discuss if it was unintentional or unintentional. The student, they had the courses on academic writing. So please check both of the reports carefully, and then we will do voting in Mentimeter. I will like pass to the chat again the code and the link, so you can vote there. And of course, if you have any questions, we will now take time to take a look at the reports. But if you have any questions, please ask us. And when you are decided, you can go to Mentimeter and vote there which of them is plagiarism.
So does anyone need more time? You can see that some people are done and wrote it to the chat.
Yeah, I can see, I'm not sure how well you can see it on the shared screen, but there are already 13 people who have been voting in Mentimeter. So please let us know if we should wait more. Mouse is staring at you. Okay, yeah, the Mentimeter, it has like a little bit funny behavior. Yeah, because it is waiting for the results to be revealed. So. Okay, 15 people voted. Okay, so if somebody else needs more time, please let us know to the chat. Otherwise, we might stop the voting and see the result. Okay, so it seems that probably everybody voted. So let's finish the voting. I'm like always struggling with this point, so I hope I will do it correctly. Okay, so nothing is happening. Here we go. Okay, so here is the result. So congratulations, the majority recognize all the tricks which I put to the reports. Yeah, the report 1 was plagiarized, and the report 2 was actually yeah, it wasn't plagiarism. The most interesting parts come now, and this is the discussion and your experience when you were evaluating the reports. So yeah, how did you find out that the first one was plagiarism and the second one was okay? Or maybe what was confusing for you in the second one, that it seemed that the second one is rather the plagiarism? Please write to the chat or just speak to us or whatever. Just give us the feedback, please. Okay, I will jump here. It's no confusion for me. It's black and white. Okay. Yeah, Akbar. So I will just display the second ones. There were like really many proper names which couldn't be paraphrased. So we can see like all these names of the Creative Commons types of the licenses and the brief introduction of what we can do with this Creative Commons licenses. Yeah, I can see in the chat somebody mentions that there is also the correctly quoted reference, and here there in this violet section there are just some proper names which you of course cannot like paraphrase in any way, and it was correctly stated there, the source Malier 2019, which is like here and as well here. On the other hand, in the first one, there was this like long green part, which it basically looks like that it's quoted properly from Fishman 2009, which is mentioned here in this list of references. But actually, the text match was found with Foltinek and others 2020. It's actually the paper on the testing of support tools, which we were discussing at the beginning, and what can be like seen there that also like this Teddy Fishman, former director of International Center for Academic Integrity and so on. So the part which is not in the quotation marks, it is also like text match because it's taken there from this document. And yeah, and you probably noticed that the orange part, again, Foltinek and others, 2020, I was like taking the, I was taking many sources when I was preparing the text for the reports from Tomáš's work, but this source is not mentioned there at all. And if you manage to like get into this orange source, which is actually the handbook, which we were also mentioning, the rest of the text, it also, like here, this black paragraph, it also comes from this source. There is just some like really bad and sloppy paraphrasing done, which took me like 2 minutes to do it, and it's like really badly done. But it was enough to trick the system, that it would be enough to trick the system because yeah, we were replacing the synonyms. Yeah, the orange text was also direct copy from the source. Yeah, and the rest like this, I have it here. Yes, I have it here. Yeah, all this yellow part is also actually plagiarism. It was just the part when I was replacing the synonyms and doing like really bad paraphrasing work and taking it from the sources which were not referenced there. There is a very good question in the chat if any text matching software has support to interpret the results like this in order not to mislead. And I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I understand the question properly, but Tomáš seemed that he does.
Yeah, I understood the question in a way that you can show them the report and ask them to, hey, explain what I can see here. As far as I know, no. But some of the systems provide educational activities and training to their customers. I know that Turnitin does that. Not sure about others.
Yeah, it's usually working to ask someone experience, or maybe like yeah, to ask some other opinion, somebody who would take a look at the text together with you and like provide you support. Actually, like asking for a help with text matching reports was the way how this workshop was created, because in this January I was approached by 2 colleagues independently. Both sent me reports with approximately 20% text match, and it was exactly this, like report 1 and report 2, not the same documents, but exactly the same situations. One of them was this like many proper names, which just resulted in the text match, and the other one, it was really plagiarized. Yeah, so
I just wanted to add that sometimes it is like not really clear. 1 month ago, I was approached by colleagues at our faculty who asked me, hey, I have this report and I don't know what to think about that. So I spent like 1 hour looking at that and looking at the sources and trying to identify what the student did there and if it is plagiarism, if it is a problem or not. After 1 hour, I gave up and asked Dita for additional help. So we spent 1 more hour looking at the report, and then we said, okay, well, it is not okay, but let him pass because we wouldn't have enough evidence for a disciplinary procedure.
And what really helps for me, what I usually base my decision on, that I really try to go to the original document whenever it is possible, and I really try to check the context, because and this is, for example, this orange part, then this would be okay, it's just like 3 lines, so he forgot to mention the reference there. Yeah, it might happen. But if you check the text around, you actually find out that this entire part come from this orange source. So, and this suddenly like enlarges the extent of plagiarism. So this is what like really helps for me to like really try to find the context in the original text. But of course, sometimes you are not able to reach the original text. Anything else which you would like to mention or point out regarding to this, or if you have some tips or tricks in interpreting or some experience? There are some tricks. And you mean the tricks by the plagiarists to hide their plagiarism, or by the tricks, yeah, the tricks by the plagiarists, like invisible characters? Yes, exactly. It's like a quite simple way how to cheat the systems, that instead of the spaces, you put their letter, color them with the white color, and suddenly the system doesn't see like 3 words in an era, but it sees just one long word, and it is not possible to find the text match. But the systems are aware of this, and they usually tell you that the letters are in different colors. Some system, they just extract, or usually they just extract the text from, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of web pages like how to cheat Turnitin, and most of the ideas presented there don't work, not only for Turnitin but also for the other systems, the good ones.
Yeah, replacing the letters with the similar characters which look similar. Yeah, that's another trick. But also the system, they usually can recognize it, and they can tell you there are letters in different alphabets. And then the translation plagiarism. Yeah, if you take the text in English, translate it to your native language in which you are studying, and then submit it, or of course vice versa, this is a very difficult task for the detection systems. On the other hand, all of them, they are doing like a lot of development in this, so maybe in few years it will be just easy job as the like text matching job. Yeah, and also the paraphrases. Just yesterday, I was complaining to Tomasz about one assignment from my student where there was like 0 text match. But when I was reading it, it was like very weird, because it was about employment and the differences about the employment. And there were weird sentences such as ladies and guys are utilized, which you can kind of like guess that it was supposed to be like women and the men are employed, not utilized. And when I was just trying to replace the synonyms and put them to Google, I found the original document, and it was actually plagiarism. So also this paraphrase can like really trick the text matching software. So this might be another like trick which you can be like careful with when you see like some really weird words which seems like synonyms for some, let's say, more common words. Maybe something is not like fine there in the text.
Yeah, there is a comment in chat that it's usually obvious it is because of these out of context words. These paraphrasing tools work in a way that they have the sets of synonyms, and when they find a word which has some synonyms, so they randomly replace they replace it with a word randomly selected from this set. So it usually you usually get words which are normally used in completely different context.
We have another question directed to us in the chat. What is our thoughts on some instructors' idea of using such report as a teaching tool in class? So the students are made to work through the report when they are learning to write academically. From my point of view, it's like twofold. On one hand, the students like learn how to trick the systems on the other hand, for many people, I think it can like really improve their academic writing, because this semester in my course of academic writing, when we were having an exercise of summarization of a text, the way how some students did the summary was they just took like small pieces of the phrases or sentences from the original text and they made the summary of them. So they did not use their own words. And I think these students, they did not do it with the wrong intention, but they just thought this is the way how they should do their summary. So for these students, it was very like useful for me to show them the text match and tell them, hey, this is like not the way how you should do the summary. You like really need to just put there your own words. So it has to be, I think, dealt carefully, but sometimes it can be like useful for students. You're welcome. So I think we can move just to a brief overview about the systems. Tomasz, do you want to sum it up?
I can
Sorry.
wrap it up. So what these tools are useful for. So again, I will repeat the important thing which I would like you to take away from this workshop. These tools are not plagiarism detection tools, they are text matching tools. So they can find a text match with the sources they have in their database. Yeah, Trinity, Plaxcan, Safe Assign, they both, all of them have the most common sources of possible student plagiarism in their database. So they are pretty reliable, but not 100% reliable. Yeah, so if there is no text match, it doesn't mean that the text is original. It cannot be it either does not have to be indexed by the system, or it can be translated from another language. And what you can always do while reading the assignment or thesis, you can randomly select some sentence and put it to Google. Yeah, this is what Deborah Weber-Wolf recommends as the most useful way how to find plagiarism. They are also useful to check for accidental plagiarism. This is what Dita was just discussing, like as a teaching learning tool, so students can check whether they did not commit plagiarism unintentionally. On the other hand, it gives the bad guys also the tool to find out where they should cover up their plagiarism. And even low percentage can indicate a source of plagiarism. If there was some obfuscation, like synonym replacement, paraphrase, or translation, you can compare the original source to the suspicion document manually. Or if you have already identified the source, there is very useful tool which can compare two documents. I'm just putting the link to the chat. It's from Debbie, from Deborah Weber-Wolf, Simtexter, and it works really great when you want to compare just two sources. So what are the drawbacks of the systems? They don't index everything. So as I said, you shouldn't over-rely on these systems, and look for other oddities in the text, some weird formatting, numbers in the text which may refer to some footnotes which were forgot in the text, and use Google. It is quite easy to obfuscate plagiarism and to fool the system by manual paraphrasing, by translation, by automatic paraphrasing of short passages. All these ways were proven, like, really to fool the system. When it comes to technical disguise, like putting text as images and these different alphabets. So some systems can deal with that. So it is more complicated for the plagiarist to cover up their misconduct in this way. Okay. So how can we prevent plagiarism? We have to take into account the most common causes of plagiarism or of any kind of misconduct, which are depicted in this triangle. First group of motives is a pressure. The students need to pass a course, they need to get a degree, or scientists are required to have more and more publication. Then there is an opportunity, so weak detection. The plagiarist may feel that people or the teachers won't find that their plagiarism. And the third reason is rationalization. So the feeling that everybody is doing that, so I can get the same advantage as the others. So when designing preventative measures, either at the institutional level, or for you it would be more useful more relevant at the course level, you have to address these three sides of the triangle. So to address the opportunity, we have to lower the opportunity, use software tools to support plagiarism detection and some other strategies to deter plagiarism. Lower the pressure, emphasize the intrinsic motivation. If the students want to learn, if the students want to get the knowledge and do their work by themselves, it decreases the likelihood of plagiarism. So treating students as partners, extending deadlines with some possible penalization, or motivating the students, everything work to prevent plagiarism. And lower the rationalization, so shift the feeling from everybody is doing that to nobody is doing that, which is related to the culture of academic integrity, and that's what all this, the whole this summer school is about. And there were some studies which prove that building culture of academic integrity and employing systemic changes really work. Both of these studies are from Australia. One of them examined occurrences of plagiarism over 10 years. During these 10 years, a university introduced courses on academic writing, started using Turnitin, introduced some educational changes and changes in student assessment, and all forms of plagiarism decreased. Similar results are from the other study, 5-year study, again, software tools, education about academic writing and authorship, and self-reported plagiarism dropped significantly. European Network for Academic Integrity has a lot of resources to prevent plagiarism, so you may go to the database of educational resources, you may refer to glossary, general guidelines, or check your knowledge and attitudes at self-evaluation tools. All of them are available from the ENAI website. So we are coming to the end of this workshop, and we can, of course, sources, not to be accused from plagiarism. Here are the contacts, and we can give the floor to Jared, or not the floor, it's give the cloud to Jared.
Thank you very much, Thomas and Dita. Yeah, looking at the time, how does a 5-minute break sound for everyone to transition the slides and to get everyone moving? I know it's still early for me, I'm ready to go, but it's getting late for some others. So maybe a shot of espresso or tea or whatever you would like. So 5 minutes. And if my math is correct, Thomas or Dita, help me, that'll be close, 2:45?
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Or 3:45, 2:45, okay, excellent. So let's come back at 2:45 and begin. All right, everyone. Hopefully you were able to stretch your legs a little bit. It is now 2:45 from the best that I can see. So we're going to continue very much in the same vein, the same activity. This will also be a bit of a workshop. We'll have some interaction. At any time, can you please, if you have any questions, feel free to ask, raise your hand, or put something into the chat. I will tell you, given, as we're talking about technology, my setup here, chat or simply asking a question would probably be easiest, as it allows for probably the fastest way to communicate, given the setup for PowerPoint that I have here. As again, moving now, kind of in many ways, we see like as the yin and the yang of cheating in this discussion. We're now going to be looking at cheating using technology in higher education, kind of the high level of cheating tools that students we have seen use to harvest that information, and then some of the technology used to somewhat counter that. Specifically, we'll have a discussion about remote proctoring in a case study at the end. So let us continue. A bit about myself. My name is Dyer. I am a test center administrator by trade. I've been in higher education for just about 20 years, actually, teaching and working in our test center. I'm also the past president of the National College Testing Association. NCTA looks to combat test fraud in higher education, kind of globally, and we also work on the appropriate administration of testing events. So most of the information you're going to see today is drawn through colleagues' experience, conference presentations of their information. As we go forward, kind of transitioning into this, I'd like to share a quote from actually one of my favorite authors on the topic, Dan Ariely. If you have seen either of his TED Talks, are quite popular, or read this book, I like to refer to him as the grandfather that everyone wishes they had, that looks at you and tells you you're bad. But he does it in such a nice way that you're willing to accept it. But his research really looks at how people who consider themselves honest act in these ways that society would consider to be dishonest. And his quote is, to start talking about academic fraud and academic misconduct, that there is a right and there is a wrong. And there is what people around us tell us is right and wrong. And the people around us are often more powerful. So as we look at some of these and we think to ourselves, I don't know, do students really use these? The pressure often coming from their colleagues can be very, very impactful, I think, as we all know. So let's go through our agenda. We're going to try to cover in the time that we have why students cheat, how students cheat, that's where the technology comes in, and what can be done to prevent it. So let me give you a few statistics to begin, as I'm sure throughout the week you have looked at these, but they're good to take a look again. So how prevalent is cheating? Well, that's a very loaded question. I think we've all seen kind of ranges that kind of spanned the time. So in the literature, I think one of the largest acceptable range is about 82%. So a couple of things here. Self-reported cheating in undergraduate students in a very large survey from McCabe through the International Center of Academic Integrity, now a few years back, had looked at least 82% admitted to cheating once. But I believe that's not as much a concern to me as, you know, going forward and working with students as the second figure, 38%. 38% are those students who, again, had self-reported that in this study that they had engaged in cheating, either plagiarism or cheating on tests, at least 3 times in their undergraduate career. So that really becomes your serial cheater. And when you think about a classroom, of, you know, maybe 25 to 30 students, 38% is quite high. So it's important to kind of dive into these things and take a look at how that is and what they're doing. In a second survey, also done by McCabe over 12 years, some other interesting trends come out that I wanted to share. Graduate students at that level, about 43% total when you look at cheating on tests and cheating on writing assignments. For my area, cheating on tests, 17% only. For Thomas and Dita, 40% on the plagiarism side. So that's a little unfortunately high, but makes sense, right? Given graduate school. When we look at undergraduate, we're looking at 39% and 62% respectively. What concerns me and what I think is also important to look at, looking at also then in high school, a step below, kind of where these things begin to foster, right? Looking at 70,000 students during this particular survey. So McCabe looked and he saw that 58% had admitted to plagiarize and 95% said that they had participated in cheating in some form, with 64 for those being cheating on tests. So a little bit more cheating in high school on tests than undergrads and graduate school. One of the issues, however, with these numbers is what's also begun to come out in the literature is that over the years, starting in the 60s until now, is that what is considered to be cheating on tests or sharing information doesn't appear to be the same. And some of the activities previously that a student would have self-reported that they engaged in cheating. Remember, these are all self-report surveys. Just not considered to be cheating anymore by students. And in other reports, when talking with faculty, they actually believe that the numbers are different and are kind of inversed here. So let's continue. Yes, that is very high, Petra. I do agree. So in our own survey that we conducted and was released last year, we went a step further. We wanted to ask students kind of an open-ended report as to what was it that they felt was a requirement for them to cheat. And so these are directly from students who responded to our survey. I'll start with the first one. In our society today, grades are more important than knowledge. We all must compete with this. So in order to keep up, most resort to cheating. That was from one of our respondents. I'm going to ask, and we keep this interactive, if anyone would be willing to read number 2, take yourself off mute, then you won't have to listen to me for 1 hour. Can anyone read number 2 for me? I'll call on you if you don't.
I can read
Thomas,
it.
help me out. Okay, Beatrice, thank you.
So number 2, I will use any resource I can to succeed if I can get away with it. I would be an idiot not to.
Right from the mouth of one of the students in our survey. Number 3, someone else?
I will do it.
Thank you.
Yeah, what the teacher doesn't know won't hurt me or her. It is not that we want to cheat, but it gives us another open window.
Correct. Okay, and the last one. Thank you.
I'll read. Anyone would do anything they can to get away with if they are desperate enough and if it means succeeding. If you are an instructor and you give an exam, then expect at least some level of dishonesty.
So those and more were published last year in the Journal of the National College Testing Association. But I think it kind of tells, you know, where we begin with. And I want to then add to this, you know, additional information. I'm looking at the triangle that Thomas had shared. And actually, I took a picture of it because I want to come back to it here briefly. So looking at perceived pressure, perceived opportunity, and rationalization as being kind of that trifecta of need with plagiarism. When looking at cheating on tests, I think James Lang in his book, Cheating Lessons, put together a 4 points that really we try to use when we're evaluating pre an assessment where a student would be most likely to engage in academic dishonesty or cheating. One, very similar, right? Emphasis on performance or perceived pressure. High stakes riding on the outcome, meaning, grade or, passing of the course or actually, finishing your diploma. Extrinsic motivation, right? So again, working with that perceived pressure from the trifecta, but that could also come in like parental pressure, perceived societal pressure. And the last one is really key, especially in assessments. So low expectation of success. We find, if the coursework is not the student's most, not their best subject, then that creates that perfect storm for cheating for some for students. So looking a little bit now, moving on from why students cheat to how. So now we're going to get into some of the interesting technology that has been moving around both higher education and the certification and credentialing kind of globally in recent years. And I'm going to start with stealing, harvesting, and that indicates kind of the beginning of this this kind of umbrella with sharing, buying, and using exam content being the next few legs that we will look at. But looking here at stealing, one of the most classic used for quite some time since the invention of the cell phone is the cell phone. In this particular instance that got some fame in New York, the New Yorker reported that one student had set up group text messages for 140 students, and the whole plan was he would take the test faster than everyone else, take a picture of it, and then send it to his friends. This sparked actually a lot of debate. Cell phones are very rarely allowed in testing environments after this, but other things have become prevalent as well. Spy pen seemed to be something out of an action movie, but we found that they were becoming more and more common to harvest information, especially if you live in the United States. You can get it for $19.99 US and have it shipped to you. And if you don't like it, you can return it, but this one has very good views. So this is a beginning, an idea of something that is available. So we're going to stop now. And actually, I'm going to ask all of you to use your computer or use your cell phone. And I want you to use your favorite search engine and just look for cheating technology. And if you're in an area where you cannot, and you had a crazy story of technology someone has used to cheat, in about 2 minutes, either by sharing or in the chat, share what you found, if anything surprised you, and what you find. So take about 2 minutes, go ahead and search and see what you find. Has anyone found anything initially that has surprised them? Yes, I do agree. Actually, all watches should be banned, and that is currently a best practice for most group testing environments. An interesting story. We were doing a college placement exam right before lockdown, and a student started the exam and they checked their sleeves and they didn't find anything, and then they came back after lunch and found out that they had snuck a smartwatch in and were using it to attempt to cheat. Fortunately, the proctor caught them. Students having a burner phone. A burner phone, we actually, unfortunately, that is becoming more popular again. It was kind of out of fashion for a while, but students will lock up a phone in a locker provided, and then they get rid, they have another one hidden on their body. Google apparently knows me. Instead of offering various technologies, it's going to be articles of how teachers are preventing. That's very true. Actually, I had this last week, and someone responded and said, I don't understand why everything I'm getting is cheating spouses and how to detect cheating spouses. And I said, well, the technologies are pretty much the same. Watches and spyglasses, yes. And yep, Google glasses, very good. Reza, thank you for sharing at YouTube. We look at that later. Yes, the shocking technology. Yeah, I saw some crazy things. Teaching in South Korea, absolutely. Spyglasses, lots and lots of comments. Thank you. How to cheat successfully on exams that contains the smartwatches. Yes, it seems like every day something new is coming out. When conducting thank you all very much for those comments and for using your thumbs this late in the afternoon. We found a number of things, and what we did is particularly to look at what a starving college student would be able to afford on a budget. So we said $20 US was the highest that we wanted to spend, and what could we do? And we started there and very quickly found two things. One, that students were willing to spend a whole lot more, and two, that there was a lot to be found. Now, everything that I'm going to show you not only is able to do audio, but it can do video and take still pictures, problematic for any type of assessment, right? Language assessments, etc., can be just as much a victim to this as others. So these all were particularly found on Amazon. This one for $9.88. If we were in person, I'd have you hold it. And it does look a little bit cheap. The issue is most of these fall into what we call, areas of similarity, where you, when you get used to seeing something day in and day out, like a set of keys, then the probability of you inspecting it on a test day is less likely when things are available everywhere. And so this with a set of keys on it, very easy to mistake, and students can take pictures. Now a newer one, USB charging hubs. Those are quite common in almost every classroom. Even when the students have, a cell phone put away, this would be facing directly at the teacher and able to harvest information. And you get a 7% discount from Amazon and the US here for this one, so they give you a break. This is a USB drive or a thumb drive that actually I'm running this presentation off of. It functions like a normal thumb drive. However, it can record and take video at the same time for $19. It's not fantastic. It's a little bit better than I would expect for $19, but this was an actual test that we took a picture of with this device and were able to share it with someone else. For a while, button cameras became quite problematic. And so we became on the lookout for individuals who were dressing up a little nicer than they normally would for a test. And they would put that little button camera, can run for about 3 hours, go into a testing center after locking up their watch, locking up their cell phone, etc., and put that directly to use, either in a sleeve like this or in a front pocket. And part of our training became, for a while, to have to look at people who sat like this for an extended period of time, because 5 minutes is normal, but 2 hours, this becomes aberrant behavior. Most people don't sit like this for 2 hours. So those were the ones more suspect of cheating. As someone else had mentioned in the chat, yes, spy cameras, these ones, they look a little fishy, right? You would probably catch these or suspect them if somebody came in. However, I've seen new ones coming out recently, a little bit more, closer to $200 US price point, but they're identical to the glasses that I'm wearing now. They have no contact points. The memory is internal and quite easy to harvest information using those. Jewelry is another item that has become very, very common, and it can be used to harvest information. And kind of in our latest batch, who would have thunk, but yes, light switches and electrical outlets. And this was actually a very interesting presentation that I attended, where the presenter actually had 2 or 3 of these around the room and asked everyone in attendance if they could identify the cheating devices, and they were able to see a camera, they were able to see someone. No one saw the light switch or the electrical outlet, for the simple fact that they don't seem to look out of place. And it's these common items that are ubiquitous around us that are often used for students. Yes, are these for students or for James Bond? I know it's the reality is that it feels that way, but the accessibility is the issue. They're quite quite easy to get their hands on, and they do serve their purpose quite well. And we'll talk about in a minute what students do with it, right? That's even more kind of the issue going forward with these, and kind of our dilemma. The last one I want to share, because actually this is quite a serious issue, a key logger, or any type of device that can directly get any information that you are inputting into your computer. Most faculty, most high school teachers work in an environment where their computer is directly in the classroom in which they are teaching. And if they have a proper PC, it usually doesn't move. And a student can use a key logger to very easily harvest any of their username and password information, which is terrifying in and of itself, but particularly within the academic context, that would allow students to change their grades right before. Fortunately, in almost all the cases that we've seen, and probably these are the cases that got caught, it goes from a failing grade to like a perfect grade a minute before the submission is due. If only a student were to go from like a marginal grade to a marginally better grade, they probably wouldn't get caught. But these are very easy to come by. I've actually seen them much cheaper. They go right in, and you can pop it out and have all that information. So now, sharing the information, now that it's been harvested, now that it's really taken out, either you can use it or you can share it with other people. For a long time, frankly, for us, before essay mills became a bigger issue, brain dumps were the biggest issue were the conversations here. Brain dump is simply when you take an exam and then you walk out and just dump it to a website for distribution, sharing to somebody else. So Cisco, these are computer exams uploaded by individuals, and you can download it for a fee. They were kind of difficult to navigate. You had to, if you wanted the SAT to enter college, you had to go to one site. If you wanted to do a computer test, you had to go to another site. They were all very sketchy, wasn't very well organized. Come forward to the last few years, and unfortunately, thanks to Chegg or Course Hero, these file sharing sites are so well organized, it's now become a piece of cake for students not only to harvest that information, but then share it. And the disturbing trend for us is now seeing, as you may be aware, and let's get into Course Hero and Chegg. If you're not aware, if you're not familiar with the two, in essence, they are they market themselves as material specific homework help and study resource sites. You can buy a subscription and it will help you with your class. Unfortunately, they work, their currency really is educational material. So that nice shiny front end of an altruistic study help group on the back end becomes a huge database of illicit material, frankly, quizzes, tests, other information that faculty would prefer are not out there. They have, and yes, Oscar, they of course here I did have an academic integrity conference. They've also been then presenting themselves, frankly, as in a more positive light, and have been trying very hard to do so. However, because it is on the back end, there really is no policing of things, and students can upload whatever they want. We find a lot of content that gets harvested ends up here as well. I'll stop and share for a quick one. They are developing these resources that allow faculty members to share their test content directly prior to a testing event, and then promise during the window of the test that no students could look up this information. However, when we asked the vice president of sales, how this worked, they said, well, the test becomes a study material prior and then post the test. You just can't look at it during the test. Well, it kind of defeats the purpose of the entire test is available online prior to the test, because it then allows the students to obviously get all the information in what should be a protected document. So I do know that they are trying, but they are not, they're not, frankly, helping to facilitate students going in the right direction. So buying, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on essay mills. I know you've had another session about that, but what's fascinated us as well is not only the prevalence of essay mills, how easy they are, but also how poor sometimes the quality is that's coming out. I know colleagues here and I have shared that research. It's been fantastic. What presented itself in the same vein to us more this year, we actually had 2 instances of students that had not only just tried to buy a test, but actually had engaged with someone to do their entire coursework for them, or proxy testing, if you're aware. And so it actually, one of the students only came out because they ended up having kind of a disagreement with their tutor, and the tutor came forward and outed the student that it hadn't been the student doing the work the entire time. So it's still a big issue, and always surprises us that someone would go to such lengths to game the system, if you will. Now that we've used the technology to harvest, let's go into some of the very ingenious ways that students are using this context. Yes, thank you very much, Oscar, for placing in the chat Thomas Lancaster's paper on Fiverr. I know another colleague had also replaced one on the experience of participating with contract cheating as well. All right, so I mentioned the using the keystroke logger. This is a gentleman that a few years back was made some national news because he was changing his grades from F's to A's and got busted for that. So the other more kind of the low stakes, and I love to share these because they make you grin, but they also make you start looking at everything students do a little bit more. So yes, we're moving a little bit out of the technology, but here's the product of what the technology has helped you do as well. So we have a Starbucks, on our campus, and so I use this example. Starbucks is notorious for giving you those coffee collars, right? And so the coffee collar drop here allows you to hide all that information that you had here. Are state capitals in alphabetical order when the faculty member has their back to you to take a look. Here's another example, very easy to do with a color printer. Have that information facing you as opposed to facing the faculty member. Again, Starbucks at least often gives you 2 cups. The 2-cup scenario never would come into question. We've seen students have any information like lined on the inside here. But my favorite, and frankly, I think the most ingenious, is the waterproof cheat sheet just below the level of the coffee, where as you drink it or tilt that coffee to you, you can see the information displayed, and then, a good roving faculty member could then not see it when you put it back down or you put the top on. Yes, Angela. So an excellent point, that this shows that assessment should aim to address higher order skills, not simple memorization. Unfortunately, as I think we all know, and challenges going forward into academia, if that is your career path, that simply just isn't the case, right? We don't find that. It seems to be the level of where the conversations are going. But at the end of the day, many faculty are stressed and don't always have that ability. And so we do find that these continue to be pervasive issues in higher ed. So let's continue a little bit more with the wow factor. Again, Starbucks here, pastries, etc. So as a best practice, looking at the chat, yeah, absolutely. As a best practice, beverages and food are not allowed in testing centers, and they shouldn't be allowed in most high stakes testing environments. We do find that at 8 a.m., it's very hard to tell students that they're not allowed to eat something, or 7 a.m. And so there's that balance there where we see these here in the lining of a pastry item. Now moving on to other things that are always around us, pens. These revolving pens were quite a hit for some time, and students began, using the opportunity to change as the pen rotated different items that they needed to remember for their tests. Moving on, I know probably the Coca-Cola bottle is the most famous example, which is why I don't use it. This is one that, again, we also have you're available to buy on our campus. It's very similar to the Coca-Cola idea that they have, where students can lift off this, the cover on the outside of the tea, and then change it. In this particular one, this was done in, it took about 10 minutes on a computer with a color printer. And if you read through, this is all about Greek mythology. And it continued on into the ingredients in alphabetical order, and then moving on to the nutritional facts, and even down into where it was manufactured. So all of the key areas were changed for this particular person. These naked, if you're familiar with these, it's a fruit drink, but for us, it's very useful as it's very viscous, it's very thick. And it allows very easily for this to be removed. But the clever aspect here is it's on the inside. And so you couldn't actually, even on inspection, frankly, if it's full, couldn't see it. But as the beverage is consumed, the information becomes available. Thomas, yes, we often say the same thing. They do deserve to pass. And frankly, one can only hope that after spending so much time, delicately updating this, they get there and they no longer need it. I mean, that's kind of the hope. So smartwatches came up in previous discussion. Those are typically banned, and part of best practices, those should not be allowed. What we were not prepared for, and I had said before, the amount that students are able or willing to spend. This particular device, let me walk you through it, was kind of the bane of a colleague's existence for a while, because frankly, it was almost undetectable. And so a student on the left here would be sitting in the exam room being appropriately proctored or invigilated, as it may be, and not necessarily able to see what the extent of what was going on. And now for more, here, so more complicated example, right? Not just, lower order thinking skills. This was applicable across the board. This is a HD camera that streams live that allows the student to very quickly just scan the text. If they're in a private room, they could also speak to the individual who is sitting in another location. Actually, this works on a cellular network, so they could be miles away, they could be back at home, who has all the material out ready to communicate it back. How do they do that? Well, it has a full suite of tools here: a wireless earpiece, the camera under the wrist, the module, which in essence was a cell phone, which would be hidden in a pocket or under a shirt. And then, believe it or not, signal and navigation buttons. They thought of everything. So you could tap out Morse code or a sequence if you were not allowed to talk, or if somebody else was there, or if you wanted to start or stop simply a recording. And they found the only reason that my colleague was able to find that this had been used was because if it allows, because it was reported by a student after they had finished their, it was a chemistry class, the chemistry final, that individuals within the class had been using this technology throughout the entire semester and had shared the cost. This particular device was about $750 US, and the students had shared it and had been using it for quite some time. So all of those I'll share. If you're interested in seeing more or wanted to reference this, this is available actually through our college library, and can be used and shared through the Creative Commons if you're interested in seeing more. Now, let's move on a little bit to the future. I always like to talk about, well, what are we looking at now with the current technology, and what could we possibly be expecting? So combining current technologies, combining current student behaviors that we've seen, this is in many ways where we feel we're going to be looking going forward. So let's be perfectly honest. How many of you know of Pokemon Go, enjoy Pokemon Go, and you don't have to tell us if you still are playing Pokemon Go? What Pokemon Go did, right, it was one of the large mainstream augmented reality items, and really, brought that understanding that we could have this digital interaction with the real world around us. Now, combining that with a tool that is currently available, PhotoMath. If you're not familiar with it, it allows a student to write down what they are, any math problem, and not only will it give you the results, but it will also give you the steps if that is required. So those two things are currently available. So let's talk about the future, combining. I know someone had said Google Glasses. We do know at some point we will have some level of smart contacts or smart glasses. The ability for a student then to quickly combine on a smart glass or a smart contact, if and when the technology exists, with that augmented math application is really kind of where we see this going and being more problematic. We obviously cannot tell students in the future that they can't wear glasses. So at some point, this is going to be game changing, and it's already a game of cat and mouse, as I'm sure you can see, but it's going to be a little bit more so. Further from there, something that is currently available, but sounds like it's from the future, is the Google product called Jacquard. That's the software, and frankly a bit of hardware that combines with clothes. So smart fabrics, and with the backing of Google, it actually allows, you can see this young lady is tapping her wrist, and so the technology allows the control of smart devices, usually used for the turning on of accepting a call or turning off a call, or declining a call, but they also can be used, and this is the link to Google Play, but it also can be used, and this is concerning for us, to initiate the camera function on a cell phone. So a student who is sitting and taking a class and has done what they're supposed to and put their cell phone aside, then can turn on their cell phone remotely without a faculty member having any knowledge that the camera is being turned on. Yes, Elon Musk's Neuralink. Yeah, well, that's a whole different scenario, Oscar. So let's continue on. At this point, before we're going on, so we're going to transition from here to what is being done to prevent it and really start looking at the technology behind prevention. Any questions at this point or any other comments? Going to give me a second here to catch up with some of the chat. Feel free to ask any questions at this point or to open up to any other comments. So Oscar, yeah, it's funny that I'm looking at your comment about white chia. So in the industry, frankly, that's really what is happening, not as much in higher education, although I could see it coming, but more in the credential and licensure arena, where they have entire wings looking at, that employ like white hackers to search the internet for content, and to try to test security audits, right? To go in to secret shop to see what they can get away with, to see to truly do a penetration test on exam security going forward. Let's see. Yes, absolutely. Exam security technology to prevent cheating. We're about to get there, Akbar. So the last question, so very interesting. So metal detectors came up in the chat. Metal detectors are actually used frequently with one particular vendor, ETS, globally. There has been some pushback because of privacy. Not all centers employ metal detectors or even the metal wands, right, that scan over. They can result in false positives that can be uncomfortable scenarios. We do not currently use them, but they are an accepted practice in some areas, not listed as a best practice, but an accepted practice in many areas. Okay, yeah, I know, unfortunately it does somewhat feel like zero fun zones at this point. We often joke that we're gonna have to have students move into like medical scrubs when they come in if this all continues, but even if that's the case, something will happen. Yes, teachers need a sixth sense in the classroom. Akbar, that's an excellent point. And one of the reasons that moving forward as test proctoring is becoming a true profession, and test proctor or test invigilation training is on the rise, just to get faculty accustomed to feeling and working as a test proctor in an educational environment, that it needs to be educational, right? It needs to be beneficial for the students, but it also needs to be firm. No, we can't do no clothes. Even if there were no clothes, I'm sure if you've seen any interesting movies, I'm sure students would still figure something out. It'd be like fake skin or something they could peel off. So no, again, perception really is the best, and let's talk about that. And also, and really why we're here, right? So all of this, it's interesting to talk about, but it's very clear that a institution's approach to academic integrity from the beginning communicates the appropriate messages to students, and then they understand the seriousness of the assessments. And the environment indicates the seriousness of the assessments, and that helps, actually one of the greatest things to help reduce, as Thomas and Dita also mentioned in those the two case studies at the end. So let's go on and take a look. We went from these traditional testing centers to an entirely virtual environment, which has allowed so many additional challenges. And Dr. Thomas Lancaster, had shared recently in his report, I believe the chat, that was the link that came through in the chat, that the appearance online and file transfer sites of academic questions makes it look like cheating has gone kind of through the roof. And it could very well have been. I haven't seen any research that has shown currently that cheating has significantly gone up. Just the appearance of it is. Our case study actually showed that things were about flat, but we pivoted very quickly to a remote proctoring environment. So let's talk about remote proctoring, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We're going to start first as we go forward with a definition of terms and remote proctoring over the last 16 months has really come under fire. And I think it's important to know that it's often confused that all of what we're talking about is like one definition, right? Remote proctoring, where in fact, most of what has come under fire is in fact monitoring and not proctoring. So let's go through the terms a bit. Proctoring is what you would expect to see in proctoring or invigilation, right? Was what you would expect to see in a brick and mortar testing center. And in a remote environment would be exactly what we're doing now. It would be synchronous, it would be live, it could be done with technology or it could be done without technology. And by that, I mean, not the technology of watching someone, but here assisted technology, using artificial intelligence, which we'll talk about in a minute, to assist a human proctor with the testing event. Monitoring, on the other hand, is completely asynchronous. It is not live. It's often we call record and review, and this is what's really come under fire. Monitoring works as fascinating technology. It can work without technology assistance, with technology assistance, and even with human assistance, but not in a live context. So it'd either be prior or post, but not during the actual test itself. So this is where, frankly, a lot of the issues, well, privacy has been obviously an issue with both proctoring and monitoring, but as far as false positives, concerns of gender, race, and ethnic background has come into the conversation about allowing students to proceed, not allowing students to proceed, et cetera. Those all have fallen into the monitoring category and have really what's led to a lot of these difficult conversations. However, the technology is fascinating. I think the technology we will keep and hold on to, and it will really change the direction in the next 5 to 10 years. So let's kind of break it down. When we say artificial intelligence, we say algorithmic use in a remote proctoring or a testing environment, it can mean a lot of things. So there's more than these, but the biggest ones are either facial recognition, right? The ability to see whether a person is on camera or not on camera. And that's running through the webcam, looking at the individual, looking at points. Eye movement, specifically eye gaze, looking off the screen for particular times like this, or looking down. You know, we all really know if you're on a Zoom call, if you're looking down like this, you're looking at a cell phone for the most part. It works the same way with the artificial intelligence to be able to look down. Sound detection, really looking to see if someone is talking to someone else. And it's getting better, but it will also detect a dog barking or a train going by. Cell phone screen detection, this is pretty neat, but if a cell phone is up and you see like this, it'll detect the glare off of the screen, and if somebody is using it as well. There are others, pre and post, looking at keystroke analysis, how fast someone is typing on the screen or how slow becomes a digital signature. All of these are great, very interesting technologies. However, the drawbacks, privacy is a concern, right? Also, who's holding on to this information? Keystroke analysis has been likened to a signature because it can authenticate one individual out of, frankly, is a unique identifier. And so if that information is being stored, where is it being stored? So all of those are concerns, and we've seen a lot of pushback, and rightly so. Two of the biggest things that have changed recently, which have been very helpful. So in Washington, D.C., we've had all the way to the Capitol building issues with these software companies from an equity, accessibility, and privacy perspective. I know as well in the EU and in many places, some of them are just banned, particularly in this case, students of color and those with disabilities had severe issues with these softwares during the last 16 months. And also if any type of clothing was obstructing, the camera view, it caused an issue as well. Now, fortunately, because of all this pushback, what we're seeing is companies abandoning just artificial intelligence only in remote proctoring. However, they haven't completely walked away from monitoring. Now, their data has shared that not only is it because of the false positives, but more so the monitoring aspect, specifically during the pandemic, but prior to that, was supposed to put the emphasis on the faculty member to review all of those reports. And so how it would work is very, very similar to Dita's and Thomas's, the Turnitin incident report. For every student that took a remote proctoring exam, the artificial intelligence would work with the system, the software, to kick out a confidence report, very similar to the ones that we looked at with Turnitin. And instead of showing the particular text, it would show the particular events that were flagged, and the faculty member would have to go back and take a look at those events. Unfortunately, for example, if there was a dog barking in someone's room, then every 5 minutes or so, the faculty member would have to go back and to review that area of the footage, and it became an overwhelming task. Instead of being 1 or 2 minutes for all 30 students, it became hours, kind of across the board. So we found that almost 10 to 14% of faculty even opened and looked at the video files. ProctorU in their own research found about 10%. The University of Iowa, who was using Proctorio, found about 14%. Moving then away from this fully AI. Now, there's a lot of other companies that are using full AI and monitoring. It is just ProctorU that's moving away, but our hope is that more and more will move away from this. However, like I said, the technology is fascinating, and what we are now seeing coming out of a company, ATA, in China is a great combination of the two. And where I can probably see this moving forward in the future. So let me give you a picture of what they're using, the technology that's really come out of remote proctoring, and looking at now a actual testing environment where consent can be given and human proctors are there to work with and to intervene. But this view that we're looking at is through a camera at the front of the testing center. The proctor, the invigilator, would be standing there, but the eye gaze, the facial recognition, body movement, etc., is now being used to assist the human proctor whose eyes may not be available, which is one of the other issues. Proctors, faculty themselves, can really, it can be challenging, right? One faculty member in a room like this, one proctor in a room like this, it's very possible for a student to take a picture when their back is turned. So as technology becomes a little bit more cheaper, then I could see more and more institutions employing a similar type of technology within their testing centers to help kind of curb some of the technology being snuck into the testing centers so that they could see it and help out to get a bit more of a close watch. So the algorithm running here is taking all of these data points. This particular individual is trying to access something in their pocket, and so that would be a flag. You can see it turns red on the outside, and that would assist the human proctor to be able to give them a heads up and intervene. As was mentioned earlier in the chat, all of this is fascinating, but it can be, I think, really the most effective way to really mitigate these in higher ed is really just following best practices that are tried and true. Some of those being, keep students' bags out of reach. 2 versions of the exam can be a great deterrent. And people often say, well, really, I don't have time for 2 versions of the exam, et cetera, et cetera. I think most important here is, again, looking at what is being communicated throughout an institution, right? If you're telling students that you're showing them 2 versions of the exam, you're telling them that you take academic integrity seriously. Alternating tests in alternate rows, and then walking around and constantly monitoring and being trained as a proctor, going through proctor training to understand and to know what the experience is like. So I told you at the beginning, I'm going to walk you through a quick case study, and then I want to talk about it as it may be a similar experience that your institution went through, may not at all be a similar experience that your institution went around. So we would like your thoughts. 2 things at the beginning of the lockdown that had presented themselves to us is one, from just released a paper that I had showed that students reported that they were more likely to engage in cheating behavior on an unproctored test than when the test was proctored. And proctoring is seen by the students as not only a reflection of the seriousness of the assessment, but also as the institution taking a stand to uphold its overall integrity. That was from the paper that we had discussed earlier in the quotes. And so we were armed with that information. We knew that we had roughly about 27,000 students, and we had administered about 37,800 academic tests in the prior year leading up to the pandemic. And 18,000 of those were, for us, were placement tests. Now, a placement test is a test that a student, depending on their academic background, would be required to take to enter the appropriate level writing, the appropriate level math test, math class, to make sure that they're not in a class that's too difficult or not in a class that's too easy. So this is the information we had, and we also had a pivotal point for us. Looking back at the chat, yes, there's lots of discussion about higher level assessments and also alternative assessments. And frankly, we received from our faculty right at the beginning that transitioning online, which was a space that they had not been comfortable with, did not really allow for a whole lot of thorough investigation of creating an alternative assessment for that class. They just needed to be able to migrate their test from a test that they delivered in class to a test that they delivered remotely. So we were asked to help. Starting with the data that we had, so this is a histogram looking specifically at our math placement test from 2019. So this is spring of 2019, looking year over year. So we had 6,592 students test. Walking you through this here from on a scale of 0 to 100, roughly about 45 is the level that students needed to get into to be at college level math. Prior to that means that they either were struggling or hadn't taken a math their final year of high school and needed some refresher before they were in college level math. The peak down here right after 80 is right about where they test out, right? So testing out means you test into the highest level, or you don't need to take a college level math given your previous knowledge. Fast forward to COVID 2020, and you can see a huge difference. So this communicated a lot to us that a proctored environment supported by what we said was necessary, and we in no way could go into an unproctored environment. Take a look here. I said right around between 75 and 80 is where students were no longer needing to take either a math class or able to take the highest level of math test depending on their career choice. A huge difference. And not only that, but when you put them side by side, if you notice, the first histogram was on actually about 180. The second was only peaking out at about 90. So it tells you an even more impressive story when they look together. So this is our troubled area. We went to our academic affairs division and said, listen, I think we really need to pivot and assist with faculty. Faculty said the same thing. So this is what we did. We assembled a group of proctors, and we had a number of employees at the college that were not able to work all of their hours. And so we employed them as well, put together a very rigorous training program. And a little bit different, we worked with 1 to 2 proctors and a faculty member to not only have a familiar face, but also to have a trained proctor work with them. We were able to utilize Zoom. We had a number of issues with Zoom on laptops. We had accessibility issues, and some students just didn't have the technology. However, 99% of our students had a cell phone with decent connectivity, and so utilizing the cell phone over utilizing a computer worked out much better. The phone was located here so that they could see their workspace. I'll stop here for a moment, because one of the biggest questions that we had last week talking about this was a privacy perspective and the allowance of students allowing you to use Zoom in a testing scenario, and also just turning on their cameras. Interestingly enough, we had 100% compliance across the board. Most of that we attributed to the fact that a requirement to take a remote class, 9 out of 10 faculty stated that cameras had to be on. That's also very common here in high school and middle school. If the camera is not on, then a student does not get attendance for that day. So there is more of a culture of allowing camera usage in remote environments. And so we did not have that issue. I know colleagues have shared that would have been particularly problematic for them to utilize this scenario. That was not one of the issues that we ran into, although the technology itself was something that we did have some serious issues. We had some students that had to go to somebody else's house, et cetera, to be able to take the test. And if they could not, there were options, but by and large, they were able to do so. So our observations, in the end, we remotely proctored about 23,000, just over 23,000 exams. About 18,000 of those were used through Zoom ourselves. We did have a third-party vendor that did about 5,000, but it allowed us to maintain live proctoring, which was key. We did not want to go to a monitoring service throughout these for the issues that we've identified. And frankly, in looking year over year, the number of academic integrity violations that were reported had remained unsame. So it worked from our perspective. It was the best case scenario for dealing with the pandemic. We did, of course, have some issues. I love take a quick break here. We had this young man. We thought perhaps he was praying a lot. He said he liked to stretch and look up during his test. The proctor got very suspicious and ended up finding that there was something tacked to the roof of his study area. And so sure enough, he was trying to cheat even while on camera, looking up at his cheat sheet. So at this point, I'd like to stop, and we've really come to the end of the presentation, but I'd like to open it up to discussion of the second part for remote proctoring, and particularly this case study, if this was something similar to what you had experienced or not at all similar, please also share. Or if you think we did a terrible job and violated our students' rights throughout that, you can share that with me as well at this point. Yes, so one of the comments, cheating detection technology can trigger other cheating technology. Yes, and we saw that across the board, right? I know Thomas had mentioned that, a more recent way to game the text matching softwares to write these invisible letters. I know last week at the conference, the ENAI conference, we had shared that, and the same in this arena as well. The more we detect, it becomes a game of cat and mouse. So Petra, I'm not clear about the last comment. It needed to be conducted. If you would maybe share a little bit more.
Sorry, what I was trying to say was that I think the case study needed to be conducted. Like there wasn't any, how can I say it? I wouldn't be upset at this kind of study. These insights need to be studied. We need to be able to know what happened.
Very good. And so Jacquard, it says, what are your institutions doing to educate students' academic integrity or to promote AI? Carolyn said that is a loaded question. It's good. Would anyone like to share what you've seen to promote academic integrity? I can actually say it was thanks to both ENAI, the European Network of Academic Integrity, here today, but also the International Center for Academic Integrity, that really radically changed. I want to say it was about 5 years ago when we were in Turkey. Was that 4 years ago, Thomas? Maybe 3 or 4 years ago. It was a year prior to that.
I'm not sure what you mean.
Oh, no, the conference when we were in Turkey.
2018.
2018. Okay, so it was about 2017, 2018. I came across ENAI online and actually used some of the tools from both ENAI and for ICAI to radically, change our own institution. Prior to that, unfortunately, we had a bit of an antagonistic relationship between faculty and the dean of students, where the faculty thought more needed to be done about academic integrity, and the dean thought that less needed to be done, and it had kind of eroded that trust. So we created a academic integrity committee under our academic affairs division, not our student affairs division, that worked with faculty and have really transformed the communication across the board, adapted some different practices, and engaged in the Academic Integrity Week, changed syllabi, changed a number of items. And so it was very much thanks for the involvement with these groups. So that might be my leaving comment here as you go forward, obtain your PhDs, whether you work into academia or not, please stay involved with ENAI. Please stay involved with the academic integrity circles, because so much can come out of that, and so much benefit is yet to be taken. Any other comments? Amy, yeah, I agree. I do hope that they've updated most current training. We are working very hard with NCTA to get them into to get these specific examples into those trainings. So Jamie said you use Zoom in a similar capacity, okay, for larger courses. Okay, if there's not any further discussion, I think that will take us to the end of this part of today's afternoon, almost exactly on time. Let you go a few minutes early. Thomas, do you have any concluding comments before we prepare for tomorrow?
I have to admit, I'm not sure about exactly about what is coming tomorrow, but yeah, thank you very much for a nice presentation and a nice discussion. So we can use that yes, sometimes I can read some claims that the technology is bad and the educational sector should avoid all the technology because it only helps teaching. But we can see that we have also technology which helps to prevent cheating. So it's always like arms race. Yeah, the technology is beneficial for, let's say, both sides, for both teachers and cheaters. So we have to learn how to live with that. We have to be aware of all the methods and tools and technologies which are here. So I hope that the session was helpful in this way. And also when it comes to technology on our side, on teacher's side, we should be aware of the limitations and what it is good for, what it is not good for. So I hope you liked it, and if you have any feedback or comments either to the workshop or to Jared's presentation, so please share it with us. The workshop which Dita and I conducted was pretty new. This is, I think, 4th time we conducted that workshop. So if you see any way how we can improve it, we would be really grateful. So thanks again. Thanks for your participation on the ENAI Summer School. And yeah, I'm pretty sure that we are meeting tomorrow at the closing ceremony, but enjoy the last day of the summer school.